The problem is, when you watch those videos, I think the worst one has to be that video where he's bullying Turtle when they're in the cab and they're all eating the sandwiches and Special's trying to argue in Turtle's favour and not have Turtle be completely fucking humiliated in front of everyone. And even just argue, hey, maybe we all fucked up in different ways. It's not just all linearly on the last guy to make the last mistake who fucked the whole game up. We got it to that position, you know. We all made mistakes before. Is that when you watch that video, Reginald's not just doing it out of anger and frustration. He has like a smile on his face. That he takes like a kind of sadistic glee out of wrecking this guy. And not only wrecking him, but knowing he can wreck him. And this guy can't do fucking anything. And isn't going to do anything. And just has to sit there and take it. And you know what? If this guy wants to stand up for him, then you're going to get it next, mate. And it's this kind of sadistic glee about him that actually, by the way, I think is worse than everyday bullying. Because that's like almost pathological. That's like there's something broken in you as a person. That's the way you manipulate and like to attack other people in that particular sense. He's also someone where, if you notice his individual career, his team career, and now as an owner, is really locked into that terrible results-orientated style of thinking, where once they lose the game, he then just looks at like one or two of the final things that cost him the game and goes like, right, that's the fault there, and this is the fault here. Or even worse, just like, oh, the whole pick and ban was always wrong. And it's always just when they lose. Like, it's all results oriented. So apparently, Loco's coaching was great when they were winning all the games. Loco's coaching was always great in every other sense. It was never just Bjergsen carrying the game, by the way. That was never the case. I'm not saying it was, by the way. Loco had some good coaching at some times. But also sometimes Bjergsen was the ultimate band-aid for that team. When they should have lost games and would have lost games. I remember a game they had against like, I think it was Dignitas, the one where he just like super hard carried the game. Was that the one where he was on Zerath? I forget, but yeah, I've seen some games where they should have lost and he was the band-aid that kept them from losing it. But apparently, in that case, well, great coaching, Loco, you did a great job there. What did I do? I just let the mid laner completely carry the whole game, take over, even though he was like 1v9ing. But I guess that was your strategy, right? I mean, this is a ridiculous notion. So this results-orientated is a really bad aspect, both in terms of trying to win NA and internationally.
Now, first and foremost, when you talk about Bjergsen, I already think it's a massive flaw to have your primary carry, the superstar player of the team, and the primary focus of the team for the enemy team as a result, be the leader, be the shot caller. That already is flawed in my opinion, because for nearly all of their team, except until Doublelift came, Bjergsen was the carry, the star player above and beyond any other players that they had in their lineup. Now, the logic was, initially, this is the logic you saw a bunch of teams messing with in Season 3 and Season 4, that since he's the player who's at the closest position to roam in terms of lanes all around the map, and he works with the jungler, and then eventually when you got to like Season 4, Season 5 meta, you work with the support as well in terms of setting up ganks, he should be a player who therefore would be able to shot call. Look around the world of League of Legends over the last few seasons, and especially right now, and find me a great superstar mid laner who's also a good shot caller. As we go on in the game and decision making becomes more and more important, and understanding when to take objectives and how to apply your leads, this is where TSM has shown their biggest flaw and don't seem to have overcome it. Admittedly, their roster's gotten weaker now from bringing Wild Turtle back because they can't double lift, but that's only highlighted their flaws. It hasn't created these flaws. The flaws were there all along. Now, I think another flaw for TSM in this particular sense is not just leaving Bjergsen to do this role, but the fact that they haven't properly targeted shot callers in terms of recruitment. Like, if you look at the last couple of seasons, players they should have been writing blank checks for and sending to would be players like Mithy, players like Rainover. These are players who could help you in this. I'll give them credit for trying to get Yellow Star. That was a good move, and on paper, that certainly should have been the move to fix this problem, even though it ended up not being the case.
So, okay, let's start with this claim. When people say, they don't need the media, it's never then just presented how I presented theirs, or they don't need the media because, they just choose not to work with the media. They don't like the media. They don't like doing interviews, all these things. No. What people always say within the claim, this is always a part of it. A secondary component is always because they can do their own media. They can handle their own obligations. They can do all these things. Okay, let's see if that's true. So can TSM do their own interviews? So first type of interview, post-match interview. Can they produce their own interviews? They certainly could. They could hire a journalist to do it. They could do an interview after every match in the same style even as maybe someone like a Travis would do in a post-game. They could have even players interview each other, whatever they could do. They don't do that. Like, if they can do that, then apparently they don't think it's important and they don't do that. And so as a result, you don't get to see those interviews. Yes, they produce their reality TV show, TSM Legends, which is interesting, and that has snippets of post-game interviews, but they're not the same as a post-game interview, really. They're not like an in-depth post-game interview, what are we doing at this moment, why did you do that, by a professional interviewer who's trained to do this, has experience, has interviewed many people, understands the techniques of interviewing. That's not going on here. You're not getting that same Same vibe. First and foremost, believe it or not, this will sound funny to some people. They lose a chance to have better PR, public relations for their player. Now, people are going to be like, what are you talking about? The show's got like trash talking and joking and swear words on, and sometimes you might talk trash about another person and someone might like that, and it might be controversial and edgy. No, here's the thing. In general, with very few exceptions, the majority of people who do my reflections interviews and come on Summon Insight, the public leaves with a more positive view of that person. They feel like they get to know the person a bit more. If the person was viewed as toxic before or had extreme opinions, now when they're forced to answer a bit more or they put in a joking environment, you see that, oh, actually this guy's, maybe he's toxic to some degree in some competitive sense, but actually he's got a cool personality. Or in the case of someone like Forgiven, I can see he really wants to win and that he doesn't accept bullshit. He's just that sort of a guy. And if you'd known that before, you probably wouldn't have been as outraged before when you'd heard about the toxicity and all that sort of thing. So getting to know the other side of them, that's positive for the player and for his team. They're getting repped a lot better. That's why a lot of orgs out there, when I talk to them about doing interviews with their players, etc., they'll actually tell me like, oh yeah, actually, that's one of the reasons I kind of do let them go on your show, because even if there is like there will be the odd joke and all that sort of thing, I think overall, because it's you deal with them quite fairly and you try to help them express themselves, etc., it's going to be a plus. It's going to be a net plus at the end for them and for the org and the brand. It's going to show that, they can take a joke. They're going to just feel like a member of the community instead of this like guy on a pedestal as a player. And if he says anything edgy in isolation, can be just knocked down, torn apart.
So TSM had told you when you started out trialing, oh, the trials will only take a few weeks and then we'll have the team set. We'll build this team around you. In fact, TSM's plan was we're going to get the 6 players fairly quickly and we're going to upgrade players over time. We're going to build the team up and we're going to fill the spots we need later. But that is not what they did. And that's not in any way the way their actions betrayed their actual philosophy for the game. The team was promised all sorts. They were promised a team will be built around the core. You will have a team house. You will have an Overwatch League spot. They were actually told they would have an Overwatch League spot. You will have the ability to renegotiate your contracts when the Overwatch League starts. They were told Blizzard wants TSM in Overwatch League. So initially you're putting up with some of these problems and this mismanagement because you're thinking, okay, but down the line, I'm going to have a team eventually. When I have a team, they can even upgrade some of the players. I'm going to be in Overwatch League. Great. That's exactly what I wanted when I signed to a team. And you know what's more? I'm actually going to be, Blizzard wants us in Overwatch, so that's all set. It's all going to be fine down the line. The classic thing that you do when you're trying to string someone along, right? You tell them, oh, it's not working now, but it'll be great next week. Oh, it'll be great in 2 days. It'll be great in 3 weeks. Oh, I'm just waiting on something to come through, and then it's all going to be good. This is terrible mismanagement. The problem is when you look at TSM as an org and the way they behaved, you have to look at them and see that they used their reputation of being a big org to get the core of a team. Now, that team could have said, well, we want to stay as a team, as they did, and waited and gone to a different lineup. They could have been in one of the other teams you think of now that are not quite as big. But because this huge org's coming along and telling them, we'll get you an Overwatch League spot, and we'll get you salaries, and we'll give you a team house, and we'll build around you, and we'll get players quickly, and then we'll upgrade them, they actually are willing to break up a team that's actually pretty decent. And so they use their rep to get the core of the team. They make all these promises that they don't keep overall. They trial players over and over and over again, including forcing the Koreans onto the team that they don't want to play with, without the adequate resources of having a translator at all times. So sometimes it's just a clusterfuck. The team's losing tons and tons of the scrims. They're finding players they like, and again, those players aren't being signed. The proper negotiations aren't taking place. Negotiations that do take place just break down and almost make a mockery of the player and the fact that he should be in the team. Staff is not getting paid for weeks and weeks. Players who trial for weeks and weeks do not get paid anything. They are just trialists. They promised some of these players contracts, never delivered, never paid those players for their time. Management fails to secure any of these players over a 3-month span. In fact, they even remove a player, remember, over the tweet issue. They offer too little money. They never move on deals they're making. Eventually, after all those promises, they don't even keep on the original promise that they got the Overwatch spot. And they decide to just remove the team. The players are fucked. Yes, they get some money. Yes, they get released from their contracts, but they're done. Now, this is a key issue to make in talking about this. It's not just about all the losses they had and not getting paid and not getting the players. The team missed a lot of chances to prove themselves, a lot of chances to establish themselves for Overwatch League, and a lot of chances to win money.
How does this guy skate by every single time? Practically every TSM lineup that Bjergsen was a part of that won LCS was always about winning lane and having at least 2 winning lanes, having winning lanes in general, just as a premise, that's not even a fucking strategy, guys. Like, maybe TES and Dan1 could do it because they're the best teams in the whole world. You can't do that from a West region and think you're going to win. And then once you have winning lanes, still not using macro, still not using objectives to win the game, about winning fucking team fights. The most basic bitch, Season 2 style of play, they're doing right up to 2020. Where was all the side laning genius? Remember, Bjergsen comes from Europe. He's a fucking solo laner. That's what they're all about over there. He never really showed that that's what he was doing in NA. How about playing around unique comps? No, they just had weird comps like the occasional Zillion one. Aside from that, they would just stick to the usual shite. They had good macro, did they? Did they? Fuck, they had average macro. Just the best players brute forced into the team, winning lanes, winning situations in the game, and then they win the team fights and do basic macro and end the game. Are you kidding me? Where is the good fucking macro? Think about how many players completely fell apart on his watch, including players who were in such a toxic relationship with who he and TSM are, and they don't want the fans attacking him, that they still say they respect him, still look up to him, and still consider him to not be the problem. This is fucking gross, guys. Like, I wish he himself would just look into this and go, actually, this is a bit fucked up. How about resolving issues, right? Well, in terms of arguments, it'd be garbage, because his whole shit's passive-aggressive bullshit. The opposite of fucking passive-aggressive bullshit. Perfect circle. Opposite of problem solving. That's what he does. If you go and ask those top EU players and the best EU teams, like, how did he do it? Like, how did he solve problems? Like, you must have all gotten along. They'll tell you, no, like Origin, G2, all these other... Now, what we would do is we would fight amongst each other, but we would resolve the issues quickly. And I'd know what this guy didn't like and I'd tell him what I didn't like. And as a result, EU's legendary from going from week 1 to a better week 2 and then to the playoffs, etc. There's a reason why Worlds, I only count from Season 2 onwards. So there's been 9 Worlds and there has been a team in the semi-finals or better 7 of the 9 times from Europe. There has been 1 time from NA where they've practiced all this feel-good bullshit of taking a time out and like passive-aggressive emails to each other, and we've got to all sit around and have a discussion about this because the way that you made me feel, like, that hasn't worked. That aspect actually reflects culture and how fucked your culture is, guys. Like, I don't claim that the really like fucked up angle of like just screaming in people's faces forgiven style is reasonable. No. But there's got to be a something between the two, and depending on what your personality is, you can go further towards one aspect or the other.
Events come and go, fame rises and then falls away. You have a job, you lose a job. You do one thing, you have to move on to another. But one of the cool things about my career is I have my own support network who's always got my back. So I always know I can rely on the support to do the work I want to do and talk the way I want to talk and not have to follow certain rules that others arbitrarily have to follow. And that support group is, of course, called the Skrilluminati, my Patreon community. This video and all the others on my channel was kindly supported by Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Frisky, Ahmed Hadjou, Tobias Bernasconi, Torin, Tosh, Jensen Goh, Animosity, and you know it, always my main man Jerky's minion, rocking with me, ride or die. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest for a future episode of Reflections or a talk show? Do you want teasers? Find out who the upcoming guests are. Maybe you want to ask me a question for my video AMA where I tend to go quite in depth, or perhaps you want to take part in one of those really long donated discussions where we talk about whatever you're into in esports. Well, if any of those perks or any of the others catch your fancy, join the Skrilluminati today via the Patreon link in the description box where? Down below.